So in this video, I'm going to go over a proper client-side query. The one I did before, I was actually slipping out and talking to the backend service directly. And this is a rewrite to make sure, yeah, we're really client-side. And ran into some stuff, so that's good. So I know I'm doing a client-side one because of those issues in that. So we have some code we're going to go over in that, but we're going to be focusing on this main section here. In that, I'm going to show you another style of writing this, where I flatten this out in that. But what is this doing? Let's go take a look in that. So we'll go in here and I'll zoom in and out. And the question would be, well, I can't, it's not doing much. It's just a regular map that can zoom around. So Control-Shift-I, we'll get the inspector up. I'll clear out the console. So as we move in and that, we can see that I'm getting the total. When I was first in, there was about 546 polygons on this inside the map view. Then there were only 50, and then only 13. And the total area of age class 0 or unknown or null has been decreasing as we zoomed in. And that's mainly this guy right here. And that right now in the pop-up, I don't have that. It has a field, but that's okay. In that, so the code is running. And it is running my main.js versus my main flat. So let's go take a look at what's happening there and how it works. And so the idea is I am querying the data. Now we're going to scroll up a little bit. And classic thing, well, go get a web map based on a portal ID, right? Make a view based on that map there. And then one of the age-old questions, when are things ready to talk to, right? So a lot of times actually you get there slightly too early. And so, maybe the map doesn't even know it has layers yet. Or you get a layer, but it doesn't even know if it's a point in that and has no idea about its columns. But you're in there way early, and then your code's not working. This field doesn't exist, or there's no such layer with that name, and those types of messages, just because you just got there too early. So you kind of got to wait for the map view to be ready in that. We'll go over the stat definitions shortly. So when the view is ready, and this is going to take a few milliseconds, right, and you can't get ahead of it, well, then I'm going to go in and try to find a layer. And the layer I'm interested in is this layer called VegFire. There's two layers on this map. One is turned off by default, but it is actually in the map, the fire boundary and that. And so this, what we're looking at here is, the vegetation that could have burned in that area, and whether it was like old growth, age class, 8, 9, and that sort of thing. But we have to figure out, get one of the layers. So you either can go by position, right, and that, or you can hunt by name. Now, let's break this down. So when the view is ready, what does that mean? It's a really good question. Might know its spatial reference, might know where the box where it's looking in like the upper left lower corner, might know that. And it might know that, hey, I have 2, 5 layers, however many I have, and I might know their names in that. That's about it, right? That's not enough to query. To query, you need columns and rows and stuff. So we're not even close to being ready to query it because the layer may not be ready. But we can go to the view and get a reference to the layer. That's what we're doing here. So we're setting a variable called VegLayer, and it's going to be equal to the view map all layers. Now all layers will include the base map, so be careful in that. And I'm going to run find. Now find is what? Who is this? This part here is, we'll call this ArcGIS Maps SDK land. And then at this point, we're in JavaScript kind of array collection land doing a find. And find, the way the find's set up is, we'll find it, you kind of build your own filter, and we'll just run it. And so how do you build like a filter? You make a little function, and then you put the test inside, and hey, layer title is equal to VegFire kind of stuff. And it'll test each layer, and then, the one that returns true will be outputted and become VegLayer. So we have a reference to the layer. This next line ended up being very important. Uh, we have to force some columns to come across. Technically, this column is going to come across anyway. Why? A layers view, which we're getting down here on the next line, right? Because I use this field to do the unique value renderer, the different colored greens for the forest stands on the map. Let's go take a look, never hurts, right? All these different greens, they're based off the age class. So the layers view needs that column, and so it will be part of the view and be something that we can query on the client side. Technically, to get that drawn, that layer drawn on the map, it didn't need shape area, which is a column, but we need it for our chart. But the view's like, hey, just give us a limited set of data, just enough that is required to render, to get the layer. So we need the geometry and stuff, but we'd also, we need that column because of the unique value renderer, so it comes across. But shape area won't when it's a client-side query based off the view. So we have to force that column to come across in that via outfields on the layer, okay, in that. Down here, we use built into the map view it has a function called when layer view, but it has no which layer do you want to talk to. So what we're doing is we're working on getting a reference to the layers view in that, and we're asking when that's ready. Now, for a layer to be ready, it might need to know its own spatial extent. It might definitely needs to know its own geometry, needs to know its symbology, needs to know its fields, columns, if those fields have domains, range domains, coded value domains, a whole bunch of stuff the layer needs to know. So in the end, that's where a lot of your data is. And so you usually have to wait for a layer to say, yeah, I'm ready in that. And this is kind of what we're doing here. And it's not even the layer, it's the layers view has to be ready in that. And so this is how we get a reference to the layers view. You have the first getter, which layer are we talking about, which map view, and that. And then on this is just a debugging statement because it took me a while to figure out why is shape area not coming across in that. And so I'm popping out here and debugging to make sure that that column is coming across in terms of the layers view, just to confirm that it's there. Then what I want to do before I was just waiting for the map to be stationary and then pulling the trigger on the query, but that's because I was going all the way back to the service and that. But here I actually need to wait for the layers view to finish updating. So when you move a map around, right, the layers have to do their things, talk to their back-end services in that. And so in the sense that because we're pulling data off of via the layer and the layers view in that, we really need to wait for the layer view to finish updating, right? It's not enough for the map to be stationary because the map may have stopped and you still might have dots flying in from the service to be drawn on the screen. So if our chart is based on that layer that's still retrieving data, we really need to wait for it to say it's ready in that. And so we had to drill into the view to find out when it was ready to get a layer name so that we could tie into the layers view so that we can really tie in with React Utils into when that layer not that it's just ready, but it feels that it's got all the data that it requested from the service and it's applied all the symbology and you can see it in the map. That's when it feels that it's done its job. So this is probably a better property to watch if you're doing client-side queries, is when that layer view says that it's finished updating. That means we have everything client-side that we need, and we don't need to go back to the service to do that. And so then we can just basically, it's safe to create a query off of the layers view. Now this is different than going to the layer in creating a query or going to the layer view in creating a query, which means it should only query whatever data is sitting like in your browser, in memory, in a cached area, and that sort of thing. I then set the out statistics, and so we're not, the kind of query we're doing is actually querying for statistics. We're not going to do like a filter. Hey, select these 4 features, out of 100 that are on the screen. What we're doing in this case is all the features that are on the screen. We just want to get a total count, and we want to sum up the area, and that. And so those are the stats that we want. And then we have to get used to, when we do this style of query, a stats style of query, what's coming back is a feature set. Now, this is very a good analogy, if you've taken my database course, is that if we go in pgmin in SQL query tool, query window, and go select now, in that, what does the database return to us? Well, it actually returns us a table with 1 column, with 1 row, and in that row column intersection is the time. And so in a similar fashion, we're going to do this query, right, based to get stats. We're going to restrict it. This is some magic you have to do too, that we're going to restrict it to the view's extent in that. I suspect that if we didn't do this, we would still be querying client side, but there might be some cached features that have been cached outside the current map bounds that might jump into our query in terms of rolling up stats and that. So this is going to restrict it to the rectangle of the map view in that. And then we're going to fire that query off, and then we get a promise that, hey, when that query returns, we will get a feature set. Now, you call it feature set just so that we have a mental reminder that's what's coming back. That's sort of like the operating unit on these queries in that. And so it is structured like a hosted feature service feature set in that, and that helps you navigate it in that. Here I'm just drawing out to the console that 1 row that comes back in that. And this is what we need for our chart later on. So it's feature set dot features first row dot attributes. These would be like the column values in that. I think if you're in GeoJSON land, you go dot properties. I can't remember in that. So it's every JSON structure is different. But this one will be features. Which row or feature do you want? First one. And these are the attribute columns coming back. Okay. But we are in this nested area. Okay. And so although this is nice and short, and what might shock you is this is technically 1 line of code, in that is that we're nested in here, right? And this is this step, okay, inside a function, inside a function, inside a function. How do we know we're inside functions? Look at all the arrow. Each of these is a like an inline function, and that's in Java anonymous class or something. But we're inside a function, inside a function, inside a function, inside another function, inside another function. In that, this is the nested hell they talk about, but very nice and compact and short. In that, it also gets into scope of variables and as well. In that, and we don't need a lot of variables outside this. So what I'm going to do is actually go into my index.main and change this to my flat version. And then we'll go back to our map. Did we break anything? That sort of thing. We'll see. And that. Right. You might notice the pause here that nothing was happening in terms of the totals and that coming across because the layer wasn't ready and that sort of thing. And we're determining layer being ready by saying it's finished updating and that. And so let's go back to the flat version and take a look. And so what I tried to do is remove all nesting, right? To an extreme, right? I swung the pendulum all the way to the other side and that. So it's the same map. It's the same map view, the same definitions and that. I did have to tweak this to is null versus equal null versus going to this service. That's kind of interesting in that. That's a little change I had to do um, in that. But here we'll start expanding stuff. So here I just go, well, this is not even a collapsed. When the view's ready, get the layer view. Okay, well, let's go take a look at layer view. It's a separate, I took the, right? We're all flat, nothing nested. Get layer view, go find that layer. Hey, where's find layer? Well, it's over here, right? Hey, return layer dot title. I just stripped everything out into a separate function in that. So go find the layer, set the outfields, start watching, right? Basically, so when the layer view comes back, then start watching, right? And that. Start watching what might be a good question. And so we'll go look at start watching. Here I go veg layer view is equal to layer view. Now because I've separated this as a separate function, I need it to have like a more, I won't call it global, but a higher level variable that all the other functions can see. And this is this veg layer view in that. So we'll scroll back down. So that's something I didn't have to do when I was in the nested thing in that, because they're all inside each other, so they can all see scope-wise those variables. And so start watching, right? And watch when what do you want to watch? And then what do you want to do when that gets triggered? So the watch would be, right, when the layers view is done updating in that. Again, because this is so short, you maybe just stuff it inside there. But again, this is to get rid of all nesting completely. And then what you'll probably find is you might be comfortable somewhere in the middle until you've done enough to where you're okay with the nesting in that. So here I have a layers view by this time. I'm basically double checking, do I still have that field? I need that shape area field in that. I make it a handler, and I use the React tools, a when. So remember, when is probably for when you have a Boolean property that you're tracking. When what, and that little attitude, and that when this comes back, I guess successfully, in that, then save the query to the client. And so what are we looking for? The layer finishing updating and that. So we'll just collapse these and that. And then in the query client side, right, by this point, if this gets called, you know, and all these other functions have fired off, then it's safe to do the query. And so in here, I create a query. I use const because once I create this and fire it off, I don't need it anymore. I use the stat definitions that I declared earlier. Use the maps extent to restrict the query, and then fire the query off and process the promise coming back with the result. And then what do I do with the result? Hey, fire off this other function called process feature result. All right, and there's not many lines in here. In here, we're going to like update our chart and that kind of stuff. But this is right now, it's just debugging statements to make sure I got a feature and that I've got the object version of it and the stringified version of it, and that sort of thing. Again, you know, this is where if you chose the flat style and that you could, you know, this is where you would inject the line to say, update the chart and update the KPI, key performance indicator part of our application as well. But that's flattening out the structure, and so that you can, I guess, as you know, a beginner or new to JavaScript, see how the functions are calling, go to the function, this is what this function does. Now, but this is the trade-off. Everything's trade-offs, right? There's way less nesting. The functionality is broken up into very distinct chunks, sort of isolated with these function calls. Or, you know, we can roll all that up into this. But this is the trade-off, is this, you're inside a function, and you can tell you're inside the function, highlight all the arrows here, and this is all a little bit of nesting or functions being defined on the fly in that. And so it's a trade-off. right? One is maybe, starting out here, right? In there where it makes sense, like little one-liners, like find layer. Maybe that, well, it's so short we can just throw it in here. It's so short, just do it, right? Right there, because it's not too long in that. And then you can progress to maybe this level. But this is always the problem when you're writing this stuff, is, you lose one brace, one parentheses, one of these goes missing, it's all complaining in that. The other one is safer for a beginner, right, to track your braces and that. Not a lot of fun if one of these accidentally gets deleted. This is the only time I do end of line comments, is so that I don't lose these. One, there's a big comment there, so don't accidentally just delete it in that. But also, who does this little brace parentheses belong to in that? But again, this is basically the same code, just written differently. This was highly nested, and this is completely flat in that. But this is the same thing, right? It's the same thing, has the same result. It all depends where you are on your JavaScript journey and what you feel comfortable with in that. I'm kind of, even this is a little bit getting to my, okay, I'm approaching too much nesting at this point, even for me in that. Some of this I can follow. It's funny that right now in my brain, these are the ones I would like off somewhere else, and that because there's a function all on one line. Probably don't even need those braces, and that I could probably get away with that, not having those there. But that's the issue. Just again, same language, right? JavaScript produces exact same result with the browser, but in terms of writing, it's a very different style. Highly nested versus, completely flat. In that, nice things like this is when you have these outlines, too, built into VS Code, right? It will show you all the things you defined, and then all your functions. It's easy to navigate, by the way, in that. And so they're just, double click on these, takes the cursor to them. So in terms of navigating here, it works well. So it would look very different, or what does it look? You might as well take a look in that. In here, those are variables in that, and then we kind of have like this. That's that one big function, the callback. A little bit of drilling in that there's callbacks within callbacks in that. So it's not using this tool will help you get to different parts of it. But this is the reality, right? Where this might look, is this one thing, right? But there are all these, technically one line. We can make a good argument there in that. But it can kind of see that there's a bunch of function calls inside there. And it's basically, following the arrows as it goes along in that. So you do get a nice view. But again, when you're starting out, these things go missing all the time, accidentally in that. This helps, big end of line comment, kind of keep it as a big block so it's highly visible. But it's up to you what style you feel comfortable with, and it's okay to change and mix it up. That's all for now.